it's not a situation where it's gotten easier for the silver miners. Cost of production is bordering on the price now for some of the primary silver miners. Although, what can you say about the silver that's going to come as a byproduct from the copper miners? Because I hear it's
Yeah.
not getting easier for them either. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And in today's video, we're going to be digging into how you have a silver supply demand deficit that's been going on in the silver market for the last couple of years. That when you look at some of the conditions in today's economy, seems to be set to widen. Fortunately, to dig into that is Jorge Ramiro Monroy of Reyna Silver, who also has a lot of experience on the copper side of this. And with 70 to 80% of the silver that hits the market coming from byproduct of copper, lead, zinc, gold mines. Quite fortunate to have Jorge joining us and sharing his experience. Jorge, great to catch up with you again. Nice to see you. And how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Chris. Fantastic to see you. Thank you for giving us a chance to speak in your program. Always great to come. It's been a minute since I was here, so very happy to see you.
Well, it's always nice to catch up with you. Obviously, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been in it from the perspective of other types of mining projects, such as copper as well. And I'll just pull up, here are the Silver Institute supply and demand numbers. And you can see the market balance. This is if you include the ETFs and whether they actually have their silver in there. Well, maybe we'll find out one day. But you can see deficits the last couple of years. And certainly investment demand has risen as inflation is 8%, PPI 11%, and people can see the cost of things going up around them. Some things unavailable, yet it's not a situation where it's gotten easier for the silver miners. Cost of production is bordering on the price now for some of the primary silver miners. Although, what can you say about the silver that's going to come as a byproduct from the copper miners? Because I hear it's not getting easier for them either.
No, look, Chris, this is kind of the million-dollar question always, because the supply that comes from copper, from other base metals, is notoriously opaque. Very tough to track it. Very tough to know how much of that byproduct is available on the market. What I can tell you, since you asked me about copper, is copper has some supply fundamentals that are really dramatic. Really, really coming in crunch time for copper. I'm sure you and your listeners have been following the copper story as well. And the reality is that there's just not enough copper available. The demand is certainly surpassing the supply. But one thing that's very unique about copper is copper mining takes place in big settings. Big open pit copper porphyries are the vast majority of the copper supply, and those you can't just turn up the tap when you need more. You need to, first of all, make the discovery. Second, you need to make do the permits. There's tremendous pressure from environmental. So even once you find the copper resource, I think it's fair to say that the permitting is going to take longer and longer and longer. So, it's very tough to quantify. I think you have those figures from the Silver Institute. I went through them myself over the last few weeks. The reality is that it's very tough to tell, but there is certainly a case to be made that, those, copper byproducts are not necessarily a certainty. And when you look at the silver market, I don't think we should necessarily count on those coming on board, especially in a long, let's say for the next 5 to 10 years. You can't count on them necessarily coming in on a, on a sort of steady basis, so to speak. And then regarding your other point that you touched, which is very interesting, you're talking about, how silver miners are starting to, cost inflations are starting to creep in. Their cost of production is starting to come up as well. So, silver, almost you and I probably started speaking in your show 2 years ago. And in the last 2 years, almost every week you come, you find one more element to make the thesis for silver become stronger and stronger. 2 years ago, the silver prices break even for most companies was at $15-16 per ounce. It's now closer to 19. If inflation keeps going on, it'll be closer to 20. So for myself and for my company, Reyna Silver, that's one of the reasons why we're focused on high-grade silver, because we're looking for something that will make money under any market condition, and where the margin is going to be available there. And the reality, Chris, is there's very few silver projects coming on board that are big enough and that are high-grade enough. So again, one more element to think about silver prices going up. One of the, I've gone for a long time, so I don't know if you want to stop here and you have any questions, but I had a couple more points that I wanted to make.
No, please continue.
Well, listen, just very quickly, the other two things that I've been keeping my eye on is, I came to the US 3 months ago, and really what I wanted to do, Chris, was so many of our investors are based in the US, and so much of the big interest in silver is here in the US. And one of the big debates that I've seen is, silver becoming more of a commodity that's industrial, or is it still, sort of fundamentally, something that's a monetary, people looking at it as money. And, the last 3 months traveling around the US and meeting shareholders and meeting just overall investors in silver really gave me a very unique and new perspective on just how much believed there is here in the US for silver as an asset class. And I think people here in the US are just big believers in silver. And I think, we're at a point where people are seeing, inflation take a toll on their day-to-day. I think that is something not to be underestimated. And people are really going into gold and silver as a way to protect the value of their money. So I think, certainly, so just to recap, you have silver prices going up. So that's going to have that's going to, again, have an issue in terms of, silver supply. Number two, copper as a byproduct of silver. We know for a fact that, as copper supply goes up, yes, it frees up more silver supply, but, copper cannot be, I think there's going to be a gap between the time that copper can come into production. So for the short to medium term, I don't think copper can make a big dent on satisfying that extra supply that you need. Third, you have really a dramatic number of participants in the market, especially here in the US, who are looking for silver as a way to protect their wealth. I've been, over the last 2 years, increasingly intrigued and very interested in speaking to all the people who are, because traditionally you thought only old people are interested in silver, and now, and I think Chris more than anybody knows how many young people are turning into silver and buying physical silver. And then the last point is, I think almost every single use for silver is projected to increase, in some cases dramatically. If you look at solar panels, look at investment, look at obviously jewelry, industrial applications related to electronic cars. So maybe I leave it at that, just to give you sort of my thoughts on where we're at with the silver market, and also curious to see what do you think.
Well, I think the numbers support what you're saying, because here you look at the industrial demand 10 years ago was around 450 million ounces. Now that was up to 508 million, around 500 million for the last couple of years, projected higher this year. You look at the bar and coin demand, there we go, up 36% last year. A lot of that coming from silver squeeze. But like you said, I think now it's to the point where people are seeing the gas prices. They're seeing a more increasingly chaotic world, and more are finding out about silver. I wonder if it's going to be one of those situations where once the price starts to move, that's when you see more widespread buying, and would be interesting to see how that plays out after that.
Yeah, I think you're very right about that, Chris. I think I think we're at a point where there's just so much uncertainty. Nobody knows where to go. Obviously the Fed is not helping because they seem to be setting the message that they'll keep increasing rates no matter what. I think a lot of us who are in the precious metals business and who are so focused on what the Fed says, most of us don't believe that that's possible. It does seem like they've been bluffing, year after year. But they do have to take inflation seriously. So it's a little bit of an uncertain time. So I mean, for me personally, though, it's pretty amazing to see, even though this sort of announcements from the Fed keep putting a little bit of a damper in the days after the announcements on gold and silver. Really, the prices have been incredibly resilient. They tend to almost immediately come back. Strong U.S. dollar thesis from the old days where gold used to move on a different direction. You're now seeing a situation where U.S. dollar keeps strengthening and gold and silver hold their own. So it's certainly we're in uncharted territories. That's no question about that. But I think that the other thing that you have more on the I think both on the precious metal physical and on the explorers and producer equities in precious metals is with a slowdown of the economy, that's going to take a toll on tech. And I think at some point capital allocators are going to start looking at the precious metals sector from two prisms. One, protection as a hedge against inflation, but two, and especially in the gold companies, their margins are just phenomenal. So at some point, just a little bit of capital coming into our sector, is enough to send the whole thing up substantially higher from where it's now. So really, from almost any angle you look at it, I still think that the sector is cheap and has a lot going for it in terms of things that are favorable to it.
It's going to be stunning to see how that plays out with silver being so small, so relative
Yeah.
to some of the amounts of money that are flowing out there. We'll see how it eventually moves. Yet here, back to what you said earlier with the copper and lead zinc projects, I wonder what it's like to plan when you see that type of volatility down to $1.35, up to $4, down to $2. Here's the zinc chart. I mean, it's going up 34.81, 2000. I mean, and that same with lead. You look at the natural gas futures spiking, heating oil spiking, and they say inflation's coming down a little bit. But how are businesses supposed to plan, especially when we're looking at a supply gap already, and then what normally would have gone on in any sort of hedgeable normal market is just being destroyed because we have more interest rate hikes on the way?
Absolutely, and that's the big question is how this is going to play out. I personally can't believe they can keep increasing rates the way they're saying, with the economy going into deep recession, especially so close to an election year. That's going to be crucial. You're going to have the political landscape here in the U.S. is very unfavorable to the party that's in power. I just can't imagine they can execute on a race increase of the magnitude that they're speaking about. So I think from that point as well, they've been bluffing for years and years and years, and by and large they have not followed through. So I think that's another reason why it's not a bad idea to just stay strong in your belief on precious metals.
We'll see how this deficit gets resolved. Although, Jorge, fortunately, I like the approach that you've taken where building a company that, like you said, can withstand whether we have a bear market, and that is Reyna Silver. And I thank you for your support of the show here. And perhaps you could provide folks with an update. I know you're getting started on a drilling program at Medicine Springs. So Could you give us a quick update on what's going on there?
Absolutely. So maybe I'll give you a general update on the whole company, Chris, because at Reyna Silver we're doing a lot of exciting things. The value proposition of the company in the context of what Chris and I were speaking about is, we're single-mindedly focused on finding silver deposits that have high grade and district scale. District scale meaning, we're looking for something big. And, the silver supply is very tight. The supply that is in place, a lot of it is low grade. So it's very susceptible to lower silver prices. So really what the market is looking for is a project that's big and that has high grade silver. So we're actively exploring 3 projects, Gigi and Batopilas in Mexico. At Gigi, we've done 20,000 meters and we're about to start the next 8 to 10,000 meters. It's an amazing project. Maybe the overarching theme for our 3 projects is they're a mixture of brownfield and greenfield. Brownfield in the sense that all our projects are either former producers or right next to former producers, but the producers are producers that are from the colonial times and that really have had very little modern day exploration to this date. So at Gigi, we're looking for the missing part of the Santa Eulalia district that has produced 500 million ounces of high-grade silver. And so far we've made 2 very significant discoveries in terms of 2 drill campaigns, and each of one of those 2 drill campaigns announced a significant discovery, which your listeners can look at in detail on our press releases. Then at Batopilas, it's historically the highest grade silver mine in Mexico. It was in production all the way until the Mexican Revolution, producing 300 million ounces of silver at a kilo per ton silver. That's almost 7 times the current grade. So very, very high grade. Again, not a lot of work with modern technology. We went in last year, found multiple extensions to the historic veins, and through drilling, we intersected high-grade silver, and for the first time, gold, which had never been found in the district. We found a significant extension of mineralized gold, both at surface and from drilling. And we're going to keep drilling that asset until the end of the year. And very exciting, as you mentioned, Medicine Springs. It's our one project in the US, in Nevada. It's a project that the basis of it are a small historic mine that produced very high-grade silver and had a little bit of drilling, but very superficial. So really what we did is we have conceptualized it as a large district scale project with targets, throughout almost 4,000 hectares of that we have staked. And we're going to be starting drilling there in September. So again, what we put together on Raina Silver is something that's really well poised for adding value through exploration. And maybe the last thing I'll say, Chris, regarding our company is regarding our Batopilas project. That's a high-grade project that I mentioned. It has a fascinating history, having been, historically the biggest and highest grade silver mine in Mexico. There's a book written about it called The Silver Magnet. And if any of your listeners would like a copy, I would be very happy to send them to them. All you have to do is write me an email at info@reinasilver.com, Reina with a Y, or Jorge, which is my name, at reinasilver.com. Both emails will come directly to me, and send me your address and we'll be happy to send you a copy.
Well, I appreciate that you always do that for the listeners. I did enjoy my copy. It really put in perspective some of the different challenges that miners are facing. Not the easiest thing to do. So Jorge, I sure appreciate what you're doing out there. Seems like the right time and the right place. We'll look forward to seeing how this gets resolved. Although fortunately, Jorge was kind enough to stick around, give us a bit more detail about some of the projects that they're doing at Raina Silver. And just click on the video that's coming your way now.